Joining me now is the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe. Premier, always good to see you. Thanks for taking some time today.
Great to see you, David.
How would you assess the update the Premier's got from the Prime Minister and his team today in terms of what all of this means for the economy and where things stand with the trade talks?
Well, I think a few things. One is things that were announced. There's 30 days here now for us to find our way through that. And that may be an opportunity or that may be a challenge. But I think there is an opportunity here for 30 days for us as Canadians and our Canadian negotiating team to just really intensify and, as I said this morning, be very ambitious with those negotiations. And, hopefully, and the hope I would have is that we are able to use announcements like today to actually bring this to a head, bring it to a reviewed and renewed CUSMA deal, and actually move forward with a little bit more certainty than maybe what we've had in the last year and a half.
It's my understanding that the Prime Minister said to the Premiers today that the country needs to prepare our options if at the end of the 29 days left, there is no deal that we're comfortable with. We have to think about what we're prepared to do. Look at where there are leverage points and maybe engage in retaliatory tariffs. Do you share that view of things?
We will have to prepare for the event that we're not able to get to a deal, whether it be in this 30 days or whatever the next deadline might be. And we must remember too, this is a 9th or 10th iteration of tariffs that we have faced.
Likely not the last.
Yeah, likely not the last. And so we always need to be prepared, I think, for what points of leverage do we have? Are they feasible? And ultimately, always keep in mind what the goal is here. And the goal is to get to that reviewed and renewed deal. That is what is good for Canadians. It is what is good for American families and businesses as well. And sooner or later, we're going to have to find our way there.
Doug Ford said today, he's identified areas that he thinks are good leverage points.
Are they in Ontario?
Some of them are, but there's a couple that are in Saskatchewan and certainly in Alberta. But energy and potash, and the importance of that to the U.S. economy. Their food sector depends on potash very heavily. There has been very clear resistance from you and Premier Smith on using those industries as leverage in this in the past. Has anything changed where you'd be willing to do that if this goes sideways at the end of the 30 days?
No. And here's why. And here's why I don't believe that the Canadian government would entertain it either, is you would be putting miners, uranium miners, oil workers, and agricultural workers out of work immediately. That's not the goal here. The goal here is to have a new agreement to be able to move forward and actually expand on those industries that we have. But there's other ways to use multiple industries across Canada, or all industries across Canada, and the access to the products that we produce as leverage. The inflationary challenges that we're experiencing as Canadians is happening south of the border as well. And the only way that we're going to be able to address that in any way is for us to get to a renewed deal, actually get products flowing back and forth across the 49th parallel, unimpeded, untariffed, and ultimately make our economy more resilient. We have other challenges and challenging areas of the world when it comes to economic competitiveness. They're not always one another.
Right. But if energy and potash are off the table, from your perspective, and I can completely understand, given the importance of your economy, why you would feel that way, where do you see the leverage points? Because I know the Prime Minister did talk about defense procurement in the beginning being something that they can use, and they apparently have a list of other things that they're not quite sharing because they want to have it in their back pocket should they need it. Where do you see it, if not the energy and potash, which would be a crippling blow to parts of the U.S.?
I think it's important for us not to discuss publicly where those points of leverage may be or may come from, because that is to happen at the negotiating table. Far be it from me to start speaking on behalf of the Atlantic Canadian fishery, for example, and how we should be utilizing that industry, or even the auto industry, the manufacturing industry in Ontario. That isn't my role as a subnational prairie premier to speak about other provinces' industries and how to or not use them as leverage. But there are other points, and I think it's important for us to leave those at the negotiating table. But it's also important for us as subnational governments to continue to be informed and communicate with those at the negotiating table and the Prime Minister so that we are working together to ensure that we can get to the goal, which is that renewed deal.
So you think it's a bad idea to lay out your strategy and all your options in public so that the person on the other side of the table can see what you're contemplating doing here?
Or social media would be equally bad option. But I think there's some serious conversations that are happening here. With very serious consequences as well. We had
indeed.
a sawmill close in Big River, Saskatchewan. It's 117 jobs, by far and away the largest employer, not just in the community but in the area. And those folks that are working in that industry, very skilled folks, they don't want to talk about where our elbows are or anything else. What they want to talk about is, can we get to a deal so we can have our job back?
Yeah, well, as I understand it, and when they did the go-around in the meeting, you raised the forestry tariffs as an issue you want to see the federal government put more focus on. And what is it that's missing there in the efforts to get those lifted? Because, the softwood lumber industry in Quebec, in New Brunswick, in BC, and obviously a mill closure in Saskatchewan, you're seeing the real impact on real jobs. What is it you want to see from the Prime Minister on the forestry sector in particular?
We are, and I fear we're going to see some of that in the manufacturing sector as well in Saskatchewan, the ag manufacturing sector, and we have in places like Ontario and Quebec. What I want to see and what we're focused on in Saskatchewan is getting to a broad-based, comprehensive agreement. And that ultimately is what is going to be good for the entirety of the economy, those jobs in Big River, the jobs in Ontario, across Canada, and I would say it's also going to be good for affordability for American and Canadian families, and the cost of doing business in North America, ensure that we're competitive. As I say, our actual competitors aren't on this continent. They're on other continents around the world, and we need to start to pay attention to that.
But, the Prime Minister said something very similar today when he spoke outside of his office in Ottawa, where he said they want a comprehensive deal. We don't want a partial agreement. But the U.S. seems to want that, right? They want to peel away parts of the economy and exert their leverage on it. So, I mean, do you think they want a comprehensive deal? Because everything up to this point would suggest they kind of don't. They want to side letter and side deal this thing into their advantage.
If you look at what they need and need in the years ahead, yes, I do. They may not want to talk about it. They may want to negotiate certain aspects of it, but they do, and they need a comprehensive deal. They need more energy. They need more uranium. Where is that going to come from? It's Saskatchewan. We're building 3 new uranium mines there as we speak. There's only 2 operating right now to give you a size of the advancement of that industry. We have 300,000 to 500,000 barrels of oil that we can bring on in our province that can find its way not only into the U.S. but to the West Coast and to other markets around the world. So yes, I do. You aren't going to hear about that in the negotiations and the tactics that the Americans use, and that's why I think it's important for Ambassador Wiseman, Janice Charest, and Dominic LeBlanc, led by the Prime Minister, of course, to ensure that we aren't always publicly discussing what's on the table and what they are negotiating towards, so that we can actually get there and then it can be ratified by our respective leaders.
But I take your point on the critical minerals and uranium and the other potential down the road. But if we're not prepared to use those as leverage, to go back to what I asked you about what Doug Ford had to say, then how do you compel the U.S. to do a comprehensive agreement when they may just try to get side deals on those things, right? Because this is what they are trying to do. Like Ambassador Huckstra was talking about this the other day, saying we tried to get them to sign a critical minerals deal and Canada wouldn't. The other countries did. You understand why Canada wouldn't with everything going on, but they seem to think side deals on their terms, that's the way forward.
And I think there's been proposals that have been made, and they may not all be discussed publicly, but I think it's time for both sides, the Americans and the Canadians, to go back and look at some of the proposals that have been discussed up until this point in time, and maybe they become relevant again today. And it isn't just, the talk about potential export tariffs, which would cost many Canadians jobs in our case, but as we bring on new products, to have access to those products in the years ahead. And in order for us to even be part of that conversation, we have to be much more open as Canadians on getting our products to the world, and in many cases getting our products just even to other Canadians.
Okay, just as a final point, Premier, the clock is ticking. It's 29 days. Negotiations are going to intensify. How should Canadians feel? How should the people of Saskatchewan, are you optimistic? Are you hopeful? Or is it just, who the heck knows?
Well, a little bit of all of those, I think. But I do, and I think that as we see, the inflationary aspects, both north and south of the 49th parallel, and we see the specific points that are being suggested in this latest, which is about the 10th round of tariff, along with the timeline, which is not new, that this is an opportunity. This is a prime time for Canada to really be at that table. And if there is a deal to be had, I think there's as much opportunity that we'd be able to find in the next 29 days as we have been able to thus far. So I'm not saying we're going to get one. I agree we need to prepare in the event that we don't. But I'm as ambitious and I'm as hopeful as I have been that we can find our way to a deal sooner rather than later.
Premier Scott Moe of Saskatchewan. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you for your time.